Welcome to the Browns preview show on the Barbershop Network. G. Bush, John Kosko, man, it feels good. We had OBJ back. We had Myles Garrett in the defense looking like they've stepped up and figured something out with Joe Woods. We have JOK. A lot of different things we'll get to. But your general thoughts on the game and what you saw so far with the Browns and the Bears last week.
The defense was absolutely dominant. I really kind of what tells me is that, you know, my thoughts going into that, Justin Fields was not ready to be a starting NFL quarterback, and basically came out of that game just kind of confirming that. You don't get sacked 9 times in a game, and you know, typically for NFL quarterbacks, because the reason why that happens is you're not reading the defense correctly. You don't know how to get your team in the proper, you know, sets, adjusting protections, is whatever it is. So you didn't see Andy Dalton getting sacked like that. And then from an offense standpoint, like, it was a struggle because that we talked about, that defense is stout. That's a good defense. And eventually they just kind of they just got wore down because Brown's offense is also really good. So that was pretty much kind of like the flow of the game. Baker wasn't sharp early on. He got better as the game got going. And you know, at first game he didn't have a turnover where he throw, and made some really key big time throws down, you know, in key moments.
All right, let's get right off into this thing. You know, we talked about it. We were critical, or I've been critical of Joe Woods for about a year and some change now. And after the Texans game, I said, look, man, you know, Tyrod Taylor was 10 of 11 out there, and he was looking like he was the next coming of Michael Vick and, I don't know, some other pocket passer that could read defenses all of a sudden. But, this week, a lot of people put pressure on Joe Woods. The comments by Myles Garrett comes out and said, look, man, I'm getting double teamed. People ain't getting home. It's discouraging. And I actually thought that he said that to put a little pressure on himself, to put some pressure on the guys up front, and to kind of say, hey, look, let's be a little more aggressive. And boy, did I tell you it worked, man. Myles Garrett comes out and has a heck of a game. I mean, 4.5 sacks.
Is all right.
Yeah, he just decent. Yeah, I mean, anytime you get people chanting your name, Myles Garrett, I'm like, is this college or this is crazy? That don't happen like in the NFL. So he had a crazy day. I thought in general, I thought Malik Jackson pushed the pipe, and Takk McKinley, Jadeveon Clowney, I thought they had some nice rushes off the end and kind of forced Justin Fields up into the pocket a little bit. And I just think overall they had a really crazy day up front. What were some of the things that Joe Woods was able to do to get these guys free and moving around a little bit more than he has in the past?
Yeah, so one thing that he did in this game, which he hadn't been able to do at all with the Browns, is that he only played one snap in a 4-3 base, meaning had 4 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, and 4 secondary players. In this game, he was 73% nickel, which is 5 defensive backs, and 25% dime, which is 6 defensive backs or more. And he's been talking about being able to do that for years. For 2 years now. He's never been able to actually implement that because of the personnel that he's had. Now that he's fully comfortable with these guys, they weren't able to have the full arsenal in week 1. Week 2, it started to trend more that way. But then this game, he was able to play his secondary like he wanted to be able to play a secondary, and then he paired that with more blitzes in this game. So he blitzed on 28% of the time in this game, which is much higher than previously in previous games, especially last year. They were what was it, more of a in the teens, I think, is what the blitz percentage was for the Browns last year in first couple weeks. And then you talk about this week, there's a lot of slot cornerback rushes. They didn't actually have any simulated pressures in this one, but they had a lot of 5-man rushes and just getting after the quarterback. And essentially that's kind of what you want to do. You showed something different than what you've been showing on film pretty much ever. So you're talking about going into this game, preparing for much more base and a lot fewer blitzes. And the Browns did a bunch of that. And that confuses especially a rookie quarterback that they hasn't seen any of that stuff. and he's just going to struggle to find open receivers, to struggle to even decipher what's going on. So he's moving Myles Garrett along that defensive line a lot more than usual. He was moving him, sliding him into 3-tech to go up against guards and centers, which, just watch what he was doing. It's not as if like Myles Garrett all of a sudden became a better pass rusher, because he's basically kind of the same guy. He's just growing as he's just getting better, being able to pair Jadeveon Clowney and these other pass rushers that are really good at defeating their blocks. It allows Myles Garrett to collect those types of sacks more often than turning the pressures into sacks.
The overload that they were running on one side, they would line everybody up on like almost like a man on man on one side, have Takk McKinley on the other side, and they would either just say, hey, you three on that overloaded side win your rush, or they would do a lot more movement and texting and twist and just moving around. And one of the things about the Cleveland Browns up front, they may not be the greatest pass rushers in the world where they have 3 or 4 counter moves, but one thing that you can say about Takk McKinley, Jadeveon Clowney, Malik McDowell, even when you talk about Malik Jackson and obviously Myles Garrett, they're freaks of nature. Like, you're not gonna just outrun them. Like, you got all these guys coming around with all this energy, and you saw a couple times Myles Garrett, people were just confused, and they were like, oh, well, Myles Garrett's open, let me go ahead and just tackle this guy in the backfield. So that's a lot more what a lot of people wanted to see, a lot more of what we thought we would see from this defense. And I definitely think that's something they can build on moving forward. JOK, you mentioned him, and we'll get into this right now a little bit. We'll get into the Pro Football Focus inside the number segment. Man, JOK, he looked like he had a coming out party. His speed was just on display. There was 3 or 4 plays where he just ran around a guy, just green dogged on a blitz or whatever. What did you see out of JOK, and how was he able to come up with that 93 score? One of the highest linebackers in the league.
It was the highest linebacker. It's actually the highest defensive player in the league for the week. You go to profootballfocus.com or pff.com and check out the team of the week for PFF, and JOK got the rookie of the week. Myles Garrett got defensive player of the week, and there was Kareem Hunt and Jack Conklin actually got onto the team of the week as well, as long as those two guys. It was obviously just an all-around dominant performance from this defense, and Myles Garrett highlights it, but I think a lot of people understand how good Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was because he had a lot of pass breakups, and when you also just watch the tape, defeating blocks to make tackles for short gain or loss. He had 3 stops in this game. He had 3 pass breakups in this game. It was just everywhere. Didn't miss a tackle. His overall grade was a 93.9.
It's just a great opportunity to pivot back to the offense a little bit. We've been showering the praises of the defense so much. Kareem Hunt, man, Kareem Hunt, to me, after I come off the first game, I think people don't understand. This dude is a top level back in this league, bro. Like, if he gets all the carries, he's a top 10 back in this league. He can catch the ball. He runs so doggone hard, and just the different skill sets that he has, man. Kareem Hunt played his tail off in this game. He graded out at a 90, I believe 90.6 or 90 flat, but Kareem Hunt really had a great game. What did you see from him this week?
Yeah, 90.6 overall, his receiving grade, 90.2, his run grade 89.3. I mean, we saw what type of impact he had on the game. And you saw the difference of when he was out there versus Nick Chubb was out there. Nick Chubb had a couple of good runs, and we know the type of running back he is. He's a stud, but it was Kareem Hunt's day. And this is the kind of the benefit you get when you have both those guys, is that you can ride the hot hand. And it allows them to, hey, Hunt is feasting on these guys. He's breaking tackles left and right, and he's basically making this offensive line look good when it wasn't always there. So Kareem Hunt, I think he's the highest graded running back in the NFL right now after 3 weeks, which is kind of you talk about small sample sizes and everything like that, because he was basically. First 2 weeks was fine, nothing spectacular in terms of what he was showing out there, but
Mm-hmm.
week 3, small sample size again, boom, his grade goes up, and that's what it is. But we know that the Browns have the top running back tandem in the NFL, and what he can bring to the table is better route running, receiving than what Nick Chubb can do. When Nick Chubb has the ball in his hands, he's fantastic. He can break all those tackles and stuff like that. But his running style is a little bit more different than his. Somebody told me today that it's like he's reminded of Roger Craig, San Francisco 49ers running back in the 80s.
Back in the day, high knee.
Yeah, high knee, just a guy that just like always, you look at the highlights, you can't go back and watch full games rarely with the back in those days, but a guy that could take over games with his receiving and his running ability. And that's what Kareem Hunt can do. And they both can, have this fantastic contact balance and all
I
that
like
stuff.
that too. I like that. I like that, that comparison. I think he's a little more, he reminds me like a physical Ricky Waters a little bit. Like, Ricky Waters wasn't the most explosive guy in the world. I think Kareem Hunt might be a little more explosive. He's built a little more stockier, but still can catch the football. Another guy played for Seattle for a long period of time, actually played over in San Francisco as well in that West Coast offense. And, the West Coast offense predicated, they'll be like 3rd and 8, check down. 3rd and 8, they'll throw it for 5 yards and hope somebody else get 3 yards, So obviously that's a really good comparison. What we're going to do is we're going to take our first break. We're going to go around the AFC North, look around a little bit. The Bengals and the Steelers played. Ravens had a barn burner against the Lions, one of the best games I've seen in a while. We'll go around the league, give you some scores from the AFC North. It is the Browns preview show on the Barbershop Network. Welcome back to the Browns preview show on the Barbershop Network. G. Bush, John Kosko. As always, we want to thank everybody for just supporting the show, man. We've been getting up there. Our goal, we might hit 10,000 one of these games.
Let's go.
We need that 10,000. Keep supporting.
10K.
We need the 10K, man. Please go out and support that, man. Continue to, watch us and definitely, donate via PayPal, donate via Cash App. Your boy Odell Beckham Jr. came back. He was back in the lineup. 5 catches, 77 yards. Also had a 10-yard on a quick little reverse. Came back into the game. It looked like he was trying to get his legs underneath him. When you have no ACL surgeries, it's kind of hard to kind of come back and be explosive the whole game. Looks like he was, gassed a little bit. But in general, I thought he did a really nice job of catching the football with his hands. I didn't see too many body catches. There was a one mishap on a route, but overall, man, I thought Odell Beckham Jr. came back and gave us some steady play. And the thing that I liked the most about it was it wasn't too many theatrics. He just caught the ball, handed the ball back to the referee and keep it moving. So what did you see out of Odell Beckham Jr. and kind of from his route running capabilities and just as a receiver?
Yeah, kind of, basically everything that you said is what I thought. His grade for the receiving was a 74.6. It's a solid game. 4 of his 5 catches went for first downs, which is, good efficiency there. Was targeted 9 times, and so there was a few that were missed. Baker wasn't sharp early, like we had talked about earlier, but the one was a comeback on the right sideline where Jalen Johnson almost intercepted it, and OBJ had to push him out. That was more on OBJ for kind of having this weird looking stop at the top of the route, didn't come out of it cleanly. So I think that's, part of it where it's like, hey, he wasn't He wasn't 100%. I think we see these like Instagram videos or just these short clips that we've seen of OBJ. And it's like, man, he looks fantastic, but it's different than being in the full flow of a game where you're having to run these routes over and over and over again, and you actually do get tired, and especially for a guy coming off an ACL surgery, it's hard to you can't be 100% coming back. And I've never had ACL surgery, but talk to people that do or have had it, is that they don't really feel 100% until like maybe 18 months after the surgery, because it takes still time to just fully be back from that. And I think though that from what we saw, he had pretty solid routes and like you said, really good hands that he was catching with his body, not catching it with his body, catching it with his hands.
So yeah, I totally agree with that. And when you have the ACL surgeries, you're not working on anything explosion wise. You're not working on any of that. It's just you're just working on just being able to be a functional human. Like, I'm going to walk. I need to. Can I run without my leg hurting? Is my knee going to swell up? Am I going to be able to get in and out of cuts? Another thing is usually some people have issues with either the opposite leg because they either favor it or they don't really know that they're favoring it. And usually you have swelling or something happening with a leg or ankle. So yeah, I'm just happy he got through the first game. He didn't pull a hamstring, no calf issues or anything like that. I really thought that was great. So moving forward, let's go into behind enemy lines and let's get into this game. We got Minnesota Vikings. They're coming in 1-2. Dalvin Cook has been in and out of the lineup a little bit, but when you look at what they're bringing to the table, you got Kirk Cousins. Two more. I would say, I wouldn't even say more than solid. I would say two pretty good receivers. Justin Jefferson as a second year player. Justin Jefferson was one, in my opinion, almost a top 10 receiver last year with the Vikings. And then you got Adam Thielen, who was a guy who has been putting up consistent numbers and as the number 2 guy for a while. So when you look at this game, you got to realize that another team, Kirk Cousins is a guy who's put up over 4,000 yards. So this is going to be a game where the Cleveland Browns are going to also play another good defense, and I think it's going to be a good game. It's going to be a good, solid fought game in Minnesota. Your thoughts on what the Minnesota Vikings can bring to the table?
Yeah, this is a team that really is very close to being 3-0. They lost in overtime week 1, and then they lost on a missed field goal as time expired in week 2. And then they pretty kind of handled the business against the Seattle Seahawks, who are a good team. So this is not going to be an easy task, especially at their house. Kirk Cousins is grading one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL this year, 89.1. He's one of 2 quarterbacks to have an 80+ grade in all 3 games this year. That's with Tom Brady. You talked about Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. In my opinion, that's one of the best tandems in the NFL right there. Jefferson, I think, established himself last year as a top flight receiver as a rookie. Basically, kind of broke OBJ's record as the best grade by a rookie wide receiver. So he is legit. He makes some of the best routes out there. So they're gonna have their hands full. Kirk Cousins has always been an accurate quarterback, and especially from a clean pocket, he's gonna pick you apart and find the open receiver and put it there accurately. He's efficient. He's not going to wow you with big time throws down the field, but he's going to be able to move the chains with his throws because of his accuracy and his efficiency with that. So the way to beat this team is that you got to get pressure on Cousins, because this offensive line is not very good. The problem is Kirk Cousins gets rid of the ball at the 2.4 seconds, which is one of the highest in the NFL, or fastest in the NFL. Compare that to Justin Fields, who was only getting rid of it in 3 seconds. A half a second in the NFL is monstrous. That is a long time, and that is the difference between basically a guy being able to throw a completion versus a guy getting sacked.
Yeah, listen, Kirk Cousins, we make fun of guys all the time, of people who we think are, he's in the Ryan Tannehill boat. Like, you got Ryan Tannehill, you got Kirk Cousins. And the reason I say they're in there is because they grade so high. They grade well in regular life with their QBR, they grade well in fantasy. They grade well in terms of wins and losses. They don't really make that many mistakes, and they're if they got a guy open, they're hitting them. They don't take unnecessary sacks necessarily. So this is a game for me. I just think the Cleveland Browns, if you've seen something, if you've got some sort of a game plan now, you see where your team really thrives. I thought one of the things that I really made such a difference is if you notice how much pass rush that the Browns got last game. Magically, Denzel Ward looked like he was just back to being Denzel Ward, right? He could just knock balls down. I mean, hey, maybe John Johnson wasn't looking too bad out there. You'll be surprised what you can do in the back end when you got those couple extra seconds. We talked about with the quarterbacks getting extra seconds, but those defensive backs too. It's a difference between you knocking that down or guys running deep comebacks when you just can't get to it. So I really think this is going to be a pretty good game. What's the game plan on the offensive side of the football when we go and look on the other side of the football for what the Minnesota Vikings like to do?
So they're a predominantly cover 2 team, which is not normal for a Mike Zimmer led defense. Last year they switched at some point in the year from basically kind of a cover 4 more man team to basically just a cover 2 team because their cornerbacks were bad last year. And so they kind of switched that. They have Patrick Peterson now, so they clearly have an upgrade at that cornerback position. But Bashaud Breeland is not anything special. He has one of the worst grades as a cornerback. He might be the lowest graded. I should have looked that up, but I mean, he's been being really bad. He grades in the 30s this year. So I think what you got to do from an offensive standpoint is you got to run your cover 2 beaters. They're going to run their offense, but you got to attack Bashaud Breeland, who whenever they're in the man-to-man, find him and throw it to the guy that he's trying to cover because he's likely not going to be in tight coverage on that guy. People avoid Patrick Peterson like the plague. It's just kind of what it is because he is all over the place, but you can still attack his coverage. I wouldn't say he's the top flight cornerback that we know that he used to be, back in his prime, but you've got to be able to get through the air, defeating this cover 2. So you're going to have some honey hole shots and stuff like that. And Baker's got to be on point. And then you've got to be able to take advantage of it when they are in man coverage and find Bashaud Breeland.
We're looking at let's look at a little bit of with the X factors on offense and defense before we get to our final prediction for the game against the Vikings. When you look at the Browns, the last, I would say 3 weeks, I've been so impressed about how many formations that they get in. Kevin Stefanski is just, as a defensive player, I always watch to see how many formations and different multiple things you do. And I must say, if you watch the Rams, like the Rams will run, and Sean McVay, they'll run 6 plays. All 6 of them plays will have 4 or 5 different variations off of it. So they run stuff, and it looks like there's the same play, but they're running 3 different plays. And they will run it and run it and run it, and they just catch you off kilter in those different places. But for the Browns, they line up in some of the most odd formations. They'll come out in tight ends, 3 tight ends, and then go 5 wide with those tight ends. They'll come out with a fullback, and they'll do some different things like that. They run I formation. They run, they run big formations with 2 tight ends. They do a lot of it, and they run out of all of it. So I've been impressed with the stuff, the different formations that they're getting in. Let me ask you this question: do you think Kevin Stefanski is a little alarmed? No, I wouldn't say a little alarmed, but he expects out of some of these formations to be getting bigger plays, right? I don't think he's seen the success in the big plays that he wants out of some of these things he's trying to game plan up.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at he switches things up because it always keeps the defense on their heels, right? So there's going to be packages and stuff like that he generally just likes. But I think what you look at for the Browns is you have to see what is our strength with basically, both, all 3 games you've had basically one. Well, you had in only 2 of the games you've had like a legitimate, number 1 wide receiver that you trust. Because Landry went out in week 2. So they think about it from that aspect. They've been running a lot of 13 and 12 personnel packages, which means 1 running back and 3 tight ends, or 2 tight ends with 12 personnel. They've been running a ton of that, mainly because it's effective for them. Baker actually plays extremely well from those packages. They grade extremely well from those packages. When they run in 13 personnel, their offensive grade is an 87.5. They all play very well, and they're efficient in that. So yeah, I think they want to see more of these big shots and big plays. There's at times that he's dialed up, these play action shots to go downfield, but unfortunately, you have to be able to pass protect, or you have to be able to see it. And they haven't had the timing with the offensive line and the shots down the field. So
I think that's what makes watching the Browns really cool. Is even though you and I and some of the people who do this for a living, we watch all these games and rewatch them, but every single game we can't tell you what the game plan going to be and who's going to step up, because every single week is different, just different.
Yeah, and I think about it too. So like, I know that the Browns offense hasn't looked like this offensive juggernaut that maybe people were expecting coming into the season, but think about it from a play, like a successful rating play. So like, if you have like, you get 5 yards on first down, that's a successful play for the offense. It's essentially just generally considered that getting first downs is a successful play. Moving the ball forward, they've had a successful play on almost 40% of their plays, which is 7th best in the NFL. And then you talk about finishing drives with touchdowns or field goals, they're 3rd best in the NFL at 50% of converting their drives into touchdowns or field goals. So they're, from an offensive standpoint, they're playing pretty well. They just have, I think the big plays is kind of like what gets people excited and everything like that. And so far, I mean, they're efficient on offense. They just haven't had the big plays.
Well, let me go ahead and let's get into the X factors. I'll start off first with the offense X factor for me. I'm gonna go in a little bit the other way. I want to see the X factor of Donovan Peoples-Jones this week. I think he nice catch on the sideline. I'm anxious to see what his role is, as this is the second game that Jarvis Landry is not going to be in. I want to see a more developed role, more opportunity, maybe some red zone shot plays in terms of fades using his body. My X factor is Donovan Peoples-Jones, because I really think that he can do some things, and I think he's getting more comfortable in finding where he's supposed to get his money off and do his thing. So that's what I want to put the X factor on that man for this week. And on the defensive side of the ball, I'm just gonna go with this. I'm gonna go with Malik Jackson. Malik Jackson, man. In the middle, I liked his athleticism. I didn't know he was gonna be that athletic. I like the effort. I think it was a block football or a tip ball, and he hustles back, retraces his step, dives, tries to get the interception. I like that type of athleticism. I like that type of motor, like to be able to go after those type plays. And I think, and if I'm the defensive line coach, I'm telling my guys up front, hey, look, anybody can get it. If you just rush hard and don't give up on rushes, they're going to run right into you. I mean, we got 2 freaks of nature in Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett. Takk McKinley, I thought, really played really well. You're going to get a push in the middle. If you guys keep rushing and keep hustling, you're going to get a lot of sacks. So I'm looking at Malik Jackson as my X factor. What do you say?
Yeah, so offense, I'm going to go with David Njoku. Week 1, he had one of the best grades for a tight end, 83.9, targeted 5 times, had 76 yards. Had an overall just really good game, and really kind of been disappeared the past 2 games. Hasn't part of it is just the way that Baker plays, and he just finds open receiver, and maybe it's a game plan that week. But I want to see him being able to, if Baker's going to have to defeat this cover 2 defense, he's going to have to find his tight ends over the middle and defeating these soft zones. And that's going to be, part of that's going to be David Njoku getting up over the top. So for me, X factor, David Njoku, what can he do? Bouncing back after two, mediocre games after a really, standout game in week one. And then from a defensive side of things, I'm gonna go with John Johnson, and I think we talk about him quite often or whatever because he hasn't, at least hasn't graded out as the top guy that you were, Browns had signed and, gave him this big contract in the offseason. He hasn't graded out that way. But I look at it last year and he graded out like in the 50s or 60s the first 4 games of the season. And it wasn't until that moment that his season really took off. And part of it is this kind of the nature of the safety position. You get maybe one target a game, and if you don't make a play on the ball in that one target, like your grade kind of does suffer. But I think his game in the his grade in this game wasn't great, mainly because of the defensive pass interference call that maybe it was a little bogus, maybe it wasn't questionable there, but I think he had a really solid game that wasn't really reflected in his grade in this one. And I think from a team that's going to be taking their shot, they're going to take some shots down the middle. He's got to be there to make some of those plays.
All right, let's go ahead and put a bow on this thing. Let's get to our predictions of the game. Now, I'll tell you this. I think this is an important game because this is a game where now you're on the road. You're playing a team. You had a lot of success on defense. You could build your momentum. I got the Browns coming out focused. I got them coming out and winning this game 27-23 in a close fashion game. And they might have to come from behind to get that 27 too. They might be down a little bit. So your thoughts on the game and final score?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a battle. They have similar offensive styles. That defense is where it gets a difference. But I think the Browns team overall is just a better team. They're stronger on the offensive line, stronger on the defensive line, and then the secondary is also stronger as well. I think I'm not going to discount the fact that Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, and Adam Thielen are a great trio of skill players for them, and they can make they're going to make their yards and they're going to score some touchdowns. But I think the Cleveland Browns is a better team. We have them as our power rankings. The Browns are better than the Vikings by a few points, and I think that's pretty accurate. I think we're going to see like a 31-28 type victory for the Cleveland Browns.
All right, man. So as always, man, thank you for coming in on a Tuesday. We recorded. We're gonna put it out. This will be out Wednesday. So thank you for being out there supporting the show. Sometimes people say, man, how can I support the show? It don't always have to be monetary, right? It don't have to be monetary in terms of PayPal or Cash App or Super Chats, which you can do, and it's free. All you got to do is hit the like button, share it, subscribe to the channel, man. That helps our content be pushed out there and to get out there. And I think we try to bring unique content to the table. I think we put a lot of time, energy, and effort into this, and we just want to make sure that we can get it out to many people as that we can. So we want to thank you guys for who have already supported through monetary reasons or ways, but we also want to thank those guys who just like and subscribe and share these videos. So as for G. Bush, signing off with John Kosko, it is the Browns preview show on the Barbershop Network. Let's get that dub next week. Peace.